Hey everyone, welcome to the Pat Mayo Experience. We'll be getting to the live chat here in a second. If you're tuning in late or you're tuning in well after the live chat has ended, don't worry, it's on demand. Check the description and you can jump right to the beginning of the chat. Other things going on this week, I have almost 3 hours of podcasts and videos out over the last 2 days, talking with Feinberg on Monday, talking with Leona and Raza about DraftKings specific on Tuesday. You can find that on the DraftKings YouTube page. Subscribe to that while you're at it, and remember, always give every single video a like to help keep this stuff free, because that really goes a long way. Or you can just download the Pat Mayo Experience podcast, free, uncut, on demand, rate and review. Subscribe too if you want to. iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher, TuneIn, Audio Boom, Google Play, iHeartRadio, wherever you can download podcasts, you can get the Pat Mayo Experience. Final thing, FantasyNational.com is changing its membership opportunities. This is the final week where you can get a weekly membership for $7 that will turn into $10 next week. But if you get in now and continue with your weekly membership and don't break it from week to week to week, you can still get that $7 price locked in right now. And I suggest you go do that. There's a brand new mixed condition model where you can factor in different lengths of rounds, different putting surfaces, different wind, everything sortable in the giant stat database. You can now customize that to whatever you want, plus custom models, ownership projections, course breakdown, rolling stats reports, tournament simulator, head-to-head history between all the players. I'd recommend you go do that. It has really helped me in my game, and it helped me out at the Heritage. Now we're back at a Pete Dye track, so hopefully it can do it for me at the Players as well. And Reid Fowler will be joining me momentarily, so start filling up your questions again. Give the episode a like, and if you're looking for the cheat sheets, the DraftKings cheat sheet and my course and field preview is up on DKPlaybook.com right now. Or if you want my picks cheat sheet with my one and done selections, you can find that on my Facebook page, facebook.com/thepme. You might as well follow while you're there too. All right, let's get into this. Time for your questions. Let's go. Welcome to the Pat Mayo Experience live Players Championship Q&A. Start leaving your questions into the YouTube chat section, and I do want to encourage talking in between people in the chat. Just the big thing is when I'm scrolling through, at the person that you're responding to, and that way if I see the at symbol, I'll know it's not a question I need to answer on air because that question has been answered or it's a comment or something like that. It'll help everything just go more swimmingly. Reid Fowler, back from Hawaii, not burnt by lava, and here he is, back in Boston. What's going on, dude?
Nothing much. I guess the weather is kind of similar here, but yeah, glad to not get too close to the volcano. Glad to be back.
All right, so you ready for the Players Championship or what?
Yeah, I mean, like everyone has been saying, this tournament kind of breeds winners from all directions, right? So top guys, we'll see who's gonna come out on top, and even some guys like your boy Siwoo coming out of left field last year to win this. This tournament is really tough to predict, so this Q&A is going to be really valuable for everyone out there.
Yeah, so right off the hop, if you missed the news this morning in both of my cheat sheet and betting cheat sheet, one up on DK Playbook and one up on my Facebook page, have been updated. Paul Casey has withdrawn. He was my favorite play to kind of get off Henrik Stenson, and now I'm just going to end up playing super chalky Stenson, who's going to end up even chalkier than he was before, because I hate going to rebuild every single lineup, so I'm taking Paul Casey out, and I've left like 300 or, 300, 400, 200 left on the table in a lot of these lineups, so I can upgrade to Sergio, but I already had a lot of Sergio, or I can downgrade to Tiger, but I already have a lot of Tiger, or in the rare instance, I could upgrade to 9,300 and play Rahm, but he's my highest exposure player, and I was like, I'm pretty good with the cap. I might be playing too much Rahm as it is with the variance that we see in this tournament, so it became sort of a struggle. I started going back down into the $7,000 area, mixing around a little bit, and that's what I was doing. So I am playing Henrik Stenson now. I probably won't match the field. I'll be underweight as it pertains to Henrik Stenson. I think he's a good play. It's just he was sort of there were similar guys in that range that I just liked the same. And if one guy was going to come in at probably now like 22 to 25% ownership, I expect him to be the highest owned player. That it just made a lot of sense. I don't love him more than I love anyone else in that range, so might as well just fade him. I guess the move would just be to go to Patrick Reed, and I would bet that he's the one who soaks up some of this Paul Casey ownership, because if you were playing Paul Casey to begin with over Stenson, It was probably an ownership play. I mean, there are very few people out there that just love Paul Casey and hate Henrik Stenson, so that was the pivot off of him, and now the pivot is probably down into that range, or maybe up to Sergio, because it doesn't seem like he's going to be, like, super-duper popular. I prefer Sergio to Patrick Reed. That's why I went that way. What are you saying here?
Yeah, I mean, I'm either paying up and trying to rearrange some of my lineups to pay up to Justin Rose. I think that's a good play when you're looking at some of the corollaries that he has and why we liked Paul Casey coming into it. You look at his approach game. Now, it's not the best, but you look at his talent. He's there. John Rahm's going to soak up, I think, a lot of exposure up there at the top. So Jay Rose, to me, is paying up. Right? Again, you have to rearrange some of your lineups. But like you said, I think Patrick Reed comes in really nicely here before the withdrawal. Patrick Reed was probably going to get a 10% to, maybe 12% ownership, but par 4 scoring, very nice. If you look at his rolling stats on Fantasy National, last 24, all the way down to last 4, he's second in the last 24, first in the last 12 and 8 rounds, and then 15th in the last 4. So, he's a guy that's playing the hottest golf right now. So going down a little bit to Patrick Reed was something that I was looking at doing anyway. But like you said, I already had a decent amount of shares Patrick Reed. I'm probably not going to be overweight with him there.
All right, let's get to the chat. The very first question comes from Jeff Becker. Can you talk about Dustin Johnson's ownership projected? My first instinct when seeing his price is that he'd be huge chalk. And I think that what happened was that coming into the week, DJ wasn't really on anyone's radar. Not the best course history here. He's been kind of like, for a few months now, although he did kind of rebound a little bit Sunday at the Heritage, which was nice to see on another PGA track. So we have seen him play. It's not like he's just been off. So that's always good news. But then he came in as the 5th highest owned, and being the number 1 ranked player in the world, people they look at the bottom here, and everyone is so terrified of every single player in the $6,000 area that they want those savings. That if you take DJ, that means you can pair him with Rahm. That means you can still add another $8,000 guy, or just go DJ 3 $8,000 guys, high $7,000 guys, and we'll talk about the chalk down in that middle of the $7,000 range. It just made constructing lineups a little bit easier. So these are always off, and it's really hard to tell at the very top end right now of the top 6 players. I think that Dustin Johnson might be the highest owned of everyone over $10,000.
Yeah.
Because everyone has worked themselves into it's come a complete 360. Everyone thought he was going to be chalked, then no one thought. Now he is going to be chalked. So for me, the only one that I feel really comfortable in projecting ownership for is I think that Jason Day comes in sub 10%. Everyone else is going to be in that 15 to 20 range, and I can't get a grasp on Ricky Fowler. I know sharp people are off of Ricky Fowler, but this is a very public tournament. He's won the Players before. He's Ricky Fowler. He's popular. He might just generate 14% ownership anyway.
Yeah, I mean, like Dustin, right? You look at some of your lineups, and I'm looking at some of mine now. I mean, seeing a Justin Thomas, Dustin Johnson, lineup is something that we never get to do or see. So I think Dustin's going to be highly owned in this area because at 10-3, right, he usually gets the Rory price where Rory's at now, where he's one of the top golfers, right? So when you're getting a guy who's probably coming in at the 5th, right, the 5th most expensive guy, who's the number 1 in the world, who could lose his number 1 status, barring some different scenarios here with Justin Thomas doing well and so on and so forth. I'm going to be overweight on Dustin Johnson just because if you look at the talent that he's got and you look at how you can construct your rosters with him, like if he's an elite player, right? You look at his par 4 scoring, you look at his off the tee game, especially at courses where you don't think he should do well. Right, at these smaller courses, this guy is elite with his long irons. He's great with his wedges, and so I like Dustin. I'm going to be probably twice the field if the ownership's coming in at 15%. I'm probably going to have 30% of Dustin Johnson there.
Everyone, if you're in the chat right now and watching, thank you for tuning in. Reed and I really appreciate it. But if you want to keep the show free, please give the episode a like. It takes like 0.4 of a second. It just took me longer to say that than it would take you to do it. So please go do that. Next question. Jordan asked, do you know what has caused Jordan Spieth to struggle here? Seems like a course that should fit him well. I agree. It does seem like a course that should fit him really well. And looking back at his numbers the last 3 years, so he's played it 4 times. He debuted with a 4th place finish. And then everyone was all high and mighty, be like, Jordan Spieth definitely going to win the Players Championship the next year. And then he missed the cut. And then the year after, it was like, oh, Jordan Spieth definitely going to win the Players Championship. and he missed the cut. Then he missed the cut again last year. So every single year that he's been at Sawgrass, he's gained strokes off the tee. Except for in 2015, he was neutral to the field. So that's always really surprising because historically, the one part of Jordan Spieth's game that wasn't great was his driving. But somehow at Sawgrass, it's been really good. He's been hitting a lot of fairways. His approach game the last 3 years, big in the negatives. His around the green game, big in the negatives. His putting, big in the negatives. And that doesn't even correlate, even though he's a different player now. And let's say he loses strokes putting like he does every single week, as he has basically done this entire year. The around the green game, he's one of the best around the green players on tour.
Yeah.
There's just something weird about this course. Maybe it's a mental thing. We know these Pete Dye tracks mess with players' heads. I don't know what it is. However, to go back to Dustin Johnson versus Jordan Spieth, I think that Dustin might even, I wouldn't say double the ownership, but he'll be higher owned than Jordan Spieth will. I'm using no Dustin Johnson. I'm using 25 to 30%, let's say, of Jordan Spieth here.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a good play because, again, the same rules apply to Jordan Spieth, right? He is an elite talent that just hasn't clicked for him yet in terms of getting the whole game. And we saw it at Augusta. We saw what he's capable of doing. He can rattle off birdies, right? He can perform at the highest against the highest in this tough field, right? Top 50 now, actually top 49 with Paul Casey withdrawing. He can do that. He's a guy that can do that. So if you want to pivot off of DJ and some of these other guys, Jordan Spieth is a guy that's going to be, like you said, maybe 10 to 50% owned. But if he gets rattling and if he starts to just kind of let go with his putter and kind of what Rory did before API and just let it go and let his athletic talent and get more creative as opposed to mechanical on the greens, I think that's what's holding him back a little bit. Like you said, his around the green game is scrambling, his approach off the tee, all that's there. It's just he hasn't put that all together, and his putting, which is usually one of his strongest suits. Hopefully this changes. Maybe next year when it goes to March and it's before the Masters, maybe that might change in terms of his psyche. But right now, for me personally, I'm not going to be on Spieth, but I can see why people would be as a pivot off of DJ.
Jimmy Welker asks, I have a DraftKings lineup with Justin Thomas and Dustin Johnson. Do you think it's stupid to stack both people in both lineups? I mean, anytime, and you talked about it, anytime that you can get in Dustin and Justin Thomas into a lineup, it's very rare. It's kind of fun. It has a ton of upside. I like the move. I mean, I'm not on Dustin Johnson, but I'm not anti-Dustin Johnson. It's just more of I had to trim down the top-end players that I want to play. And the consensus that you're hearing from almost everyone in the DFS community right now is that, I mentioned it off the top, no one wants to touch these $6,000 players. And there are guys down there that are going to do it. That's the one problem with this. It's just we don't know who it's going to be. For me, I like Rory Sabbatini down there, Austin Cook, Keegan Bradley. I'm playing the Boz. I don't know why. I just have a feeling for the Boz. That's the extent of my picks. Played well at Career Builders, played well at Valspar. Why not the Boz? And played some junior players here. So although he is a first-timer, he's not a real first-timer because he's somewhat familiar with the course, having played competitive rounds here before. Jonas Blixt, who just Mr. Pete Dye once every 4 tries. Why not throw him in there? But if you're going to do this stack up at the top, that's the penalty of doing it. So if you're okay accepting the risk and having to take some of these $6,000 guys or very, very low $7,000 guys, I have no problem with that.
No, not at all. Like you said, a guy like Rory, the OG Rory, he's a guy that always plays really well against tough fields. He always pops, first round leader. He's a guy who's playing well this year. It's not just a random Rory Sabbatini tournament where you see him pop and come in, T5 or T10 on the first day. So I really like Rory. Another, sort of dart throw, which is really, that's it, is Chad Campbell. He always plays well around this time. Look, the stats aren't going to give a good case for Chad Campbell, but like you said, there are some feelings that you have to play here, especially the players. This is probably the one tournament that you can kind of go off of feel, take the stats out of it, because we've seen so much variance here. A type of guys who have won this tournament. The elite of the elites have won this, but also guys, like you were saying, that should not have won this tournament have come away victorious. So throw some darts out there because it's fun. It's fun putting guys like that together at the top because we rarely get to.
Next question comes from Silas. He says, what do you think of Kevin Chappell? I haven't heard him mentioned on your shows. Finally made a cut in decent course history at the Players Championship. Yes, he came second to Jason Day here 2 years ago. Here's the problem with Kevin Chappell at the moment. And start leaving your questions in the chat and everything like that. Give it a like, subscribe to the podcast, all the fun stuff. However, he had much better form coming in that year. He was gaining a bunch of strokes off the tee, like he was earlier in the year when he was on the roll. And it seems like this injury, whatever it was, just took them all out of sorts, because even though, like, we go back and here's Kevin Chappell's form going into his second place finish at the Players 2 years ago. He was second at API, missed the cut at Shell, 9th at the Heritage, 4th at Valero, 41st at Wells Fargo. Like, really good form, gaining a ton of strokes off the tee on longer courses, on shorter courses. It didn't matter. He was positive in ball striking off the tee and through approaches. And like, the putter's going to go up and down with Kevin Chappell. It always does. And then he was gaining strokes around the green as well. His form was so good. The problem is right now, he was on a very hot run to start the year, career builder and Pebble Beach. He was great. And now we see Arnold Palmer, 7th place finish. Hey, he had played well there before. Then he sustains this injury, withdraws from the match play, and he just plays very horribly at the Masters. We were all hoping and praying that he would be healthy for that. So since he's come back, lost strokes off the tee at the Heritage, lost strokes on approach at the Heritage, lost around the green at the Heritage, made the cut last week, and the irons came back, which is really nice. But those are long irons at Wells Fargo. He gained 6 strokes through approaches, but those are longer. He lost strokes off the tee. He lost over 3 strokes around the green. I just feel like if you're getting Kevin Chappell, whose putter can just disappear on you anyway, if the rest of his game isn't trending towards the proper spot, maybe the driver comes back this week, and this is all really stupid. It's just when I look at it, and I see what his price point is, and I see what his odds are, and the other people around him, I just don't feel very encouraged about where his game is at to spike at a tournament like this. Could he do it? Absolutely. He's Kevin Chappell. I love Kevin Chappell. I want to see him get into good form, but I'm just not feeling him right now, and there are so many other good plays that I like that he just got crossed off the list. Will you be playing any Kevin Chappell?
I actually, when I was doing my lineups, I had way too much Kevin Chappell because of all of the reasons that you mentioned. It's interesting. Like you said, he's a guy that if his irons are on, he's going to get it, 15, 20 feet, right, in terms of proximity. And if his putter is on, he's a guy that we really like. Jason Day correlated, right? If it's a Jason Day course, we like Kevin Chappell, and clearly Jason Day plays well at Pete Dye Designs. But his current form is not good enough for me. His greens in regulation is piss poor. And someone that you want to, if his around the green game is not good, you think, okay, well, if his greens in regulation kind of stats out nicely, then he's hitting greens, right? His around the green game doesn't need to be stellar or even good, but both are not. And so for me, I'm not going to be on Kevin Chappell. And like you were saying, guys in that 7,400 price range, Adam Scott and some of these other guys that we really like coming into it, even up there, at 75 with Grillo as probably one of the chalkiest plays in this price range. I'd rather go with some of these other guys, even Luke List, right? He's kind of burned a couple of us, or burned us in the past couple of tournaments. And so I'd rather go towards those guys as opposed to trying to prove that Kevin Chappell is going to do well, just because, for me, he's just not in great current form.
And Luke List didn't burn us last week. Luke List was top-notch last week. He burned us once all year. So Luke List is going to be fine. Don't worry about Luke List. He's my guy. My guy, Luke List. He might win this week. How about that? How exciting would that be?
Oh, I mean, please, List. I've been playing. It's the same thing like Rory at the beginning. Like, you have to play Rory all the time, because if he and when he hits, he's going to, he's just going to rake the field. And so Luke List, again, he stats out. He's just a darling in the stat models. So Luke List at 7,400. I mean, we saw this guy, in the 9K plus range for the better part of the season, because he's been playing so well. If you look at his stats, right, and his finishes, it made sense that his price range was in that high 9 or in that mid 9. Now we get him at 7,400. That's a great price point. Again, I think he's going to be a little chalky, but I'm going to eat that chalk List.
Yeah, he's going to be a little bit chalky, but there's so many popular names all around him that I think they're all going to kind of take from each other. Grillo is the one that I really expect to be popping off the charts in terms of ownership, and then everyone else that we project as a little bit higher, your Zach Johnsons, your Luke List, Patrick Cantlay, Tony Finau, and I think I already said Zach Johnson. Anyway, there's someone else in that mix, but they're all going to be lower than we think, because I think that everyone will end up gravitating towards Emiliano Grillo. But even something like Luke List, I mean, you don't actually need him to win. And you mentioned the high price. That was only really for Valero. He was $10,000. Other than that, he's been in the $7,000, $8,000 range basically the entire season. And I mean, just look at these results. 9th, missed cut. Oh, boy. I mean, he missed a cut. Big shocker. He's Luke List. 3rd, 24th, 7th, 16th, 2nd, 26th, 26th, 12th. Like, the guy's been on a roll. Like, why not continue to play? I don't need to sit here and tell people why they should play Luke List. They know if they're tuning into me, I'm going to say play Luke List. Next question. Dane asks, thoughts on Chez Reavie? 3rd in driving accuracy percentage, 24th in SG approach this year. Seems like he will have low ownership due to soft pricing. I agree that he will have low ownership. But this, folks, is why you need to become a member at fantasynational.com. 24th SG approach for the year? That doesn't sound right for a guy who's played awful for the last 2 months. No, that's why you need to go to Fantasy National, become a member, use the rolling stats to give you a better perspective of how people are playing right now. Yeah, Chez is going to rack up there because to end the swing season and begin the year, he was fire in every facet of the game. Yeah, not so hot anymore. So let's go look at his more recent stats. And we're going to just pull up Chez Reavie here. Last 24 rounds for Chez Reavie has him at... He is 33rd in approach now, 72nd in par 4 scoring, or 41st in par 4 scoring, 72nd on long par 4s. The around the green game has been just dropped off the face of the earth after he was so good earlier in the year. And some of these rounds are still recording when he was good. So because he's only been playing 2 rounds recently. So some of that's still factoring in some of the good stuff. Past few events, the Masters did make the cut, didn't play especially well. At the Shell, lost on approaches, lost around the green. He's lost on approaches in 4 of his past 5 starts. He's lost around the green in his past 5 starts, and he's lost in putting his past 4 starts. I think as a skill set, when you get the best of Chez Reavie, I do think this is a course that can play really well for him. So if you're not worried about his form and you want to go on longer term historical type things, then yeah, I think that he can be a nice flyer play. If you play 20 lineups and you have him in 2, you have 5 times, potentially 10 times the field on Chez Reavie. I just don't like where his game's at.
Yeah, me neither. I think at that price range too, you're looking at guys that you could see coming. Martin Keimer is right there at 6,900, a guy that you like. And a guy that's coming into, this a little bit better, right? We haven't seen him yet come into form that we're used to, but he's a guy that's right above Chez in price, and I'd rather go up to Keimer if I'm going down in that high 6 range. Chez Reavie, yes, his approach games, even if you looked at the mixed model at Fantasy National and you put in some of these corollaries, right, with tee to green, current form, he doesn't stat out well. And then putting on lightning fast or fast greens, he's probably in the 90 to 100 ranked over the last 24 rounds. So I'm going to be out on Chez just because, I haven't seen it. You can kind of make a case for, his approach game, but I'm going to be off on Chez.
Yeah, and again, a lot of these rounds, even when you sort by like past 12, they're still factoring in the back end of his hot run. And once that right, he hit the wall. And this happens to guys who aren't elite players. They can go through stretches of like 5-6 weeks, just fire, and then all of a sudden they're back to being who they used to be. And you don't want to be, and listen, we kind of saw this with Kyle Stanley a little bit last year. He had the hot run at the beginning of the year. This is the case for Chez Reavie, by the way, if you do want to play him. Then he kind of petered out a little bit, and then he just comes back at the Players, and boom, he's fire again. So maybe Chez Reavie can do that. It's just not something that I really want to get into as it pertains to Chez Reavie. And even if we just sort by last 12 rounds to factor in, like if we box out the hot run that he had 2 to 3 months ago, he's now 100th in the field in strokes gained approach. He's 144th, almost dead last in par 5 scoring, and you need to take advantage of those easy holes. And we know that he doesn't have the distance to really get there in 2 on a lot of them, so the course just becomes harder for him. It's not that I dislike short hitters. Some short hitters can be really good here, but if they're not typically scoring, if they're the ones who typically score on par 5s, that's great news. If they're ones who really struggle on par 5s, that's a bit of a red flag for me. Next question. Biggest question of the week, as it is every week. Who is the most Anderkirks? Was not a problem last week when your doppelganger, Jason Day, ended up taking the prize. Now, I credit, and this is the thing, we always have Tim on the Kentucky Derby show, and he always picks the Kentucky Derby winner correct. He once picked 8 bells, it came in second, and had to be put down on the track. Since then, Tim had picked the winner every year except for 1. It's been almost like 10 years. So what happened last week? We got into bizarro world. Tim makes his Kentucky Derby pick dead last in the field, and then Jason Day wins a golf tournament. So he hits his first golf winner in 4 years, and his Derby pick comes dead last. So very interesting stuff. He's on Molinari this week, if people want to know. Looking at list, DeChambeau and Grillo in like 40% of your lineups. Is that too much? I don't think it's too much if you want to be overweight to the field on those guys, because we talked about Grillo being mega chalky, probably the highest owned guy in the $7,000 level, depending on where Matt Kuchar ends up coming in. He's a really hard guy to track because the public really likes Matt Kuchar. So if we're thinking like 18 to 22% for Griot. 40% is probably what you need if you want to go really overweight. I've matched the field on Griot. I'm going to match the field on DeChambeau. He should be around like 15 to 19%. And then the other one, List, I'll just be overweight because it's Luke List. What are your takes on those? Would you go 40% on any player? Because the only players I have at 40%, I have two of them, and they're both elite guys.
Yeah, I think with this tournament, it's tough to go more than I think 30% for me, just because of the variance here. In other tournaments, like the Masters and some of these other ones, you can, right? You would have to kind of go overweight on that. But at this tournament, it's tough. It's tough to go extremely overweight. It depends. How many lineups are you playing, right? Or if we're doing the 20 lineups, then, 15, 20% is not too bad. If you're going 40, 50%, I mean, these guys really have to get you a good finish. Having said that, you don't need 6 of 6 like you usually do, but my top exposure is going to be around 30%. I'm going to stick to that.
All right, next question from the chat. Keep loading them in there. Reid, were you still in Hawaii during the volcano? You were.
Yes, I was. Thank you for reaching out and sharing your concerns for my safety. I appreciate that. But I was on the other side of the island, so I don't want to, lay claim like I was even close to the lava. But it was pretty scary. It's scary stuff. I definitely felt the earthquakes, but not anywhere near the dangerous part. So thanks for asking, though.
I've never been in an earthquake. What's that like? It sounds terrifying. Did you have to do that thing where you go to the door and do this?
No. Well, I was on the beach, so I don't know if that was a good. Well, that's not a really good thing if a tsunami's coming, right? Because then I'm just toast. But I kind of felt like I was either feeling the after effects of the night before in terms of maybe having a couple too many beers, but I kind of put my hand on the ground and thought, okay, well, this is not me. Maybe I feel a little dizzy or a little woozy. And then I kind of felt the ground, and the ground was shaking. I was like, okay, this is a mini earthquake. But like I said, it wasn't too bad. You definitely felt the earthquakes. But we were on the other side of the island, so we were safe.
All right, next question. Interested in the best $6,700 to $7,100 player. And I have most of these guys listed in my cheat sheet on DKPlaybook.com, but he asked Stricker, Streelman, Keegan, Shez, or Landry. For me, I like. Do I want to say Keegan the best? Because I do like. I have you. Okay, I'll put it this way. I have them all with the same exposure in my lineup. I played 2 of 20 lineups. Actually, I'm playing 25 this week, so 2 of 25 lineups with these guys, and I'm playing Landry, I'm playing Keegan, and I'm playing Stricker. I might be playing Stricker in like 4. So Stricker, probably my favorite play of that group you just mentioned. The other ones that I'm using from down there, like I mentioned, Rory Sabbatini, who I'm a bit higher on, Jonas Blixt, and Dominic Buzzelli are the other ones, and Austin Cook. Those would be like the sub guys that I just kind of have sprinkled around when I paired up 2 elite guys at the top. Who else are you looking at in the $6,000 area?
Yeah, the only guy that I would add to that is Bill Haas. I think Bill Haas is someone that...
Oh, yeah, I love Bill Haas. I got Bill Haas in a lot of lineups. Yeah. I was thinking about $6,000 guys.
Yeah, I mean, it's a $6,000 guys. I mean, we talked about it. I think Keegan, for me, Rory as well. Chad Campbell is going to be in some of my lineups just because I like him around this time of the year where he kind of pops and then he just falls off the face of the earth after that. But yeah, Bill Haas, if we're going to that 7K range, is someone that I really like just to add to those.
And Keimer. Keimer's another one I'm using just because I love Party Marty Keimer. He was the site until I hit Danny Willett at the Masters and then hit an even bigger win this year at the Heritage in terms of DraftKings. My single biggest win ever was hitting Keimer to win the Players 4 years ago. And I think I've lost every cent of that back at the Players in the 3 subsequent years. So fun times. White Moses. Hello, White Moses. In a loser gets tarred and feather match, you need to pick one outright winner from this group. All right, ready? Rory, Day, DJ, JT, or Spieth. Who is your single favorite guy, no price attached, that you think is going to win? For me, Justin Thomas.
Man, I mean, if I want to be contrarian to you,
You don't need to be. If you want to say Justin, listen, I ran every model I have on Fantasy National. It's kept spitting out the same name, Justin Thomas.
Yeah, I mean, you have to go Justin Thomas. If you look at all those rolling stats, he comes out the best. He's the guy that you want at a course like this. So if I had to, I would go Justin Thomas as well.
Or you could just take number 2, bottom 70 in the field per official world golf ranking. All else is a push. Who else would you take from outside of that class? I would take Tiger Woods. That's who I would take. I think Tiger could win this week.
Yeah, I mean, my pick was Casey then. But actually, Feinberg tweeted this out. It is actually really nice of Casey to tell us before so we could change our lineup. So that was really polite of Casey to do that. He was my guy, but if I had to go off of him, Patrick Reed is someone that I'm really kind of honing in on after, looking closely at who I want to pivot off of Casey. So Patrick Reed is an interesting play. So for me, that would be someone else outside of this field that I'd be looking at.
Next question, Jeff asks, is Brooks Koepka underpriced for this week? I think he is. I'm using Brooks. I'm not quite sure where the form is. Like, even when you look at him last week, we thought he knocked the rust off at the Zurich a little bit. He did make the cut last week. He played, and he played all right. So I think this is always a course we talk about. You get back to Florida, you always like to play Brooks. You can take driver out of his hand a little bit. You know he can hit these irons straight and very, very far. He can attack the par fives. It's the health concern with Brooks. It's the rust concern with Brooks, and I think that's going to keep a lot of people off of him. I think that upper $7,000 range is where people are going to make money this week. When you look at the winning lineup, I don't know which guy that it's going to be in particular, but it's going to be someone like Brooks Koepka. It's going to be someone like Mark Leishman. Those are the two guys that I'm playing from there that aren't really on anyone's radar, but we know are elite players. When they're playing well, they're just kind of out of form, and I would rather take a chance on guys like that. Tommy Fleetwood's another one that just no one wants to play anymore after being the chalk last week, but if I'm going to, we can talk about Chez Reavie's of the world and Kevin Chappell's of the world. They're just on I think Chappell's better than Reavie in terms of skill set, but now we're talking about an uptick in terms of skill set. Guys that have won real events, have been good along the long form. I'm not as concerned about poor form leading into it with those guys as I would be fringy guys. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, even that 79, you look at Alex Noren.
Exactly, I mean, that's another one.
Yeah. I mean, and I'm going to mention a guy that you're going to, just have disdain for, but even Bubba. He has terrible form here. But if you look at, yes, reason why he doesn't play so well here is because he can't, right? He can't be able to be super creative off the tee and hit these sweeping hooks or draws.
He also can't chip. That's a problem.
But if you look at his last 24, strokes in off the tee 7th. Right, strokes in approach 36, but greens and regulation gain and good drives, he's first. Now, a case for Bubba, again, he's in 2 or 3 of my lineups, so I'm not going to be overweight on Bubba. But like you said, if you look at that high 7s, like a Norn, even like I said, Bubba, there's going to be guys in that range that are really going to give you ROI in terms of where you're playing. Soft pricing, a solid field is going to allow us to get these guys at a lower price of where they should be. So again, I like that high 7s, or even in this price range is one of my favorites.
Clark asks, is DeChambeau a good play this week? I think he's a fine play almost every single week, but just know that he's going to be pretty popular this week, and you can get Tommy Fleetwood and Alex Noren for a third of the ownership. Just keep that in mind when we're talking about Bryson. Love Bryson. He really cashed a nice top 5 for me last week, so all the credit in the world. And this is a strategy course. And listen, Feinberg always says, if you can play a tournament on a simulator, Bryson can play well there. So, are you?
Tommy Fleetwood.
Yeah, I am playing Bryson in, I think, 16% of lineups, and that should be right around field average. So I'm good with that.
Yep. Yeah. Same with me. If I'm doing 20, I have been 3 of my lineups, that comes out to around 15%. But Fleetwood, he's another guy, right? 8,200. Yes, he can't putt. He's not putting very well right now, but he's another guy. I mean, top 10 in birdies or better gained. He's a guy that he can rattle off. He burned everyone last week. And so maybe you'll see some regression in terms of ownership, but at that price range and some of the other guys around there, I don't think he's going to be, higher than maybe 10 to 12% owned.
Oh, Tommy Fleetwood. Tommy Fleetwood's going to be way less than that.
Yeah, exactly. So a guy like Tommy Fleetwood at that price, at that ownership, I'm going to be overweight on Tommy.
Well, it's easy to be overweight on him, and he fits the perfect model of a guy that you want to attack in tournaments. Last week, he was in the mid-$9,000 range, and everyone lined up to play him at almost a 30% clip. He has one bad week, and now no one wants to play him, despite the fact that he's over $1,000 cheaper. This guy's an elite player. He's not guaranteeing to make the cut or do anything, but if you're going to get this sort of talent at that price and that ownership, I think that makes a lot of sense. The other guy who's sort of the pivot off me that I am using, I'm trying to see the actual percentage of lineups that I'm using him in here. I have him in 27%. Jesus, I probably shouldn't have played him that many. That's way overweight to the field. But let's go Kevin Kisner. No one wants to play Kevin Kisner, and we're at a Pete Dye course. And I made the rule. I wrote it down. When we are at a Pete Dye course, play Kevin Kisner. It always works out.
Oh, absolutely. It's same with me. I don't know why he shouldn't be coming in at less than 20%. This guy is amazing on Pete Dye courses. He was in a playoff, at this course, and we've seen him pop at almost every single Pete Dye course. At $8,000, he's in a bunch of my lineups as well.
Yeah, I feel like that might be a bit too much. I just realized I was only at 12% on Tommy Fleetwood. So I'm going to change one of those lineups, get my exposure back up to 16 and 22. And that feels like a nice... Listen, 22 is going to be mad. It's going to be like 4 times the field with Kevin Kisner, so I'll be good there, I think. Kyle asks, how awesome is it that FantasyNational.com now allows you to sort by course design? Shout out to Josh Culp on that one, because at futureoffantasy.com, an excellent site, a nice resource I like to use to learn more about the course, and I think everyone should. He filtered over all the courses, all the info, anything like that. So now on Fantasy National, if it's a Donald Ross design, a Jack Nicklaus design, or a Pete Dye design, the most common ones on tour, you can just sort by those instead of just going to the manual filter and thinking about all the courses. Because sometimes I always forget the Travelers, TPC or River Highlands. It eludes me for whatever reason. Of course, where Bubba's won, by the way. Good at Pete Dye courses, except for this one. That's what really worries me the most about Bubba. But yeah, that's a filter. You can go search by now. It's pretty cool. What's your guess for those who forget to unroster Paul Casey? 1 to 2%. I guess because he withdrew right now, I bet you it's 1% or lower. Because if you were savvy enough to go create rosters on like Monday or Tuesday afternoon, you're probably the type of person that's going to go back and adjust them, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And again, not to... Well, actually, to add to the Fantasy National, you can change your rosters now on the roster sim. So it's actually really nice to do that. But yeah, again, with the Paul Casey, you want to make sure you withdraw from those. But again, I don't think this tournament, like I said before, I don't think you need the 6 out of 6. Now, you want to get, all the chances you can. So make sure you make those changes. But yeah, just rewind to this to see who we like as a pivot off of Casey.
All right, next one. Yeah, that's the next question too. Karl Marx. Shout out Karl Marx. Where's Casey's ownership going? We address this right off the top. I just think it's going to filter onto Stenson. You're going to see Patrick Reed with a little bit higher. Yep. Just because if you look above him, like Stenson was chalky to begin with, and it's always easier to go down than go up, and because most people max out their lineups when they're trying to do it anyway. Maybe if they take some money off, readjust their lineups, maybe Rose gets more, maybe Sergio gets more. But I feel like people were playing Tiger to begin with. People were playing Stenson to begin with. And if they were pivoting off those onto Paul Casey, they might just filter back in. I mean, that's what I did for a lot of mine. So that's where we kind of concluded on. Who is your main pivot now that Casey is out? You had to pick one guy. You can pivot up $200 or down to wherever you want. Who would be the one guy that you would go to?
Yeah, my guy's Patrick Reed. I think that he's a guy that's coming in with great current form. His around the green game is fantastic, so I'm going to be on Patrick Reed for my pivot.
Yeah, so I put some of those shares onto Stenson. I moved some up to Sergio, but I already had a lot of Sergio, a lot of Tiger, so I didn't want to go crazy with it. But I did move a few shares onto them. So I don't have as much Henrik Stenson as I did Paul Casey. Put it that way. With the Casey news. Paul Casey, popular guy this week.
I know.
Is this a great week to expand? This is what Todd asks. Is this a great week to expand your player pool and take smaller percentages of more guys? Yes, I think so at least. Yep. And that way you can embrace the variance a little bit more. Like I'm looking at my total ownerships right now, and I'm trying to find the guys, like I said, that I have over 40%. I count one. I actually only have one over 40%. It's John Rahm, if anyone wants to know. I have one guy at 38%. It's Justin Thomas. And I have one more guy above 30%. Other than that, like I'm doing a lot of 8%, a lot of 12%. Because and this actually, you have to avoid some of the chalkier guys because of this. Like, I have no Ricky, which he might actually be a pretty decent pivot play here. But I have no Ricky, I have no Dustin, I have no Day, I have no Justin Rose. I have no Patrick Reed, so just avoiding some of those means I can take a few more shots down because, look, we just go back and look at the leaderboard last year. Like, you weren't going to get on Vijay Singh. You know what I mean?
Right.
Just so if
or like Poulter.
Yeah, like just get yourself, or even Siwoo. He was like less than 1% owned. So you get this sort of thing where you do want to take more shots, almost do the machine gun spread down lower in the list. But you do want to have a concentration of some players that, if they do hit, you make sure that you can put all those other kind of sprays to good use. That if Rahm and Justin Thomas hit for me, or Sergio or Tiger, one of those things, if 3 of those guys end up inside the top 10, then I can start being like, oh, Rory Sabbatini's inside the top 10. I have enough of him that it matters. I have enough Brian Harman that it matters. I have enough Bill Haas or Steve Stricker that those guys come to good use. And I've given myself more shots. So I think it's a way that you can whittle down at the top and then expand at the bottom. That's the strategy that I'm taking. I could be completely wrong on this, but that's what I'm going with.
Yeah, and I think you're able to do that with this tournament because of all the stuff that you mentioned earlier in your shows, that there's extreme amounts of variance at the players because of the course setup, because of how difficult it can play. There's a lot of different ways you can skin a cat here. Guys that are bombers aren't necessarily going to play well, and short hitters, right, aren't necessarily going to play well, but they can. So when you're talking about variance and you're talking about player pool, I usually like to build my core and then sprinkle that around. In this one, I'm going to take less of that approach and try and do more balanced approach and try and get guys, like you were saying, that we can embrace that variance down below in that low 7, that mid 7, and really hone in on those guys, right? Like you were saying, Brian Harmons of the world, these guys who aren't Leishmans, they're not going to be heavily owned, but you can see them and you can build a case for them to do well here because of that variance. And so you can sprinkle that around, diversify some of your lineups. The most guys, or the most percentage that I have on my lineups is around 30%, the Grillos, DJ, so on and so forth. But I'm sprinkling it around too in that low 7 range because there is a lot of talent down there and the pricing is soft.
Thomas asks, am I playing more lineups than usual this week? I am. I went from 20 to 26, and I meant to play 25, but accidentally made another lineup because, I'm bad at this stuff. I can't keep track of anything. That's where I'm going with. Are you playing more than usual?
No, I'm sticking at that. I'm either going to play 10 and go heavy in a tournament or play 20.
Okay, cool. Next one, we have, what is Justin Rose's expected ownership? He's a full fade for me because I expect him to be relatively chalky. He's another one of those guys that it makes a lot of sense for you to get to him. He's that threshold below Jon Rahm for all the Paul Casey people to move up to if they want to. Right now, I have him projected as the 3rd highest owned player on the slate this week. You?
Yeah, same thing. I mean, Rose, like you said, I think before you maybe could have built a case around him not being heavily owned, but now with the Casey news, I think a lot of us are going to try and get up to him and sort of price down in that low 7s just because there is talent. So I think he's going to gain more ownership before that tournament starts tomorrow.
It's funny how much DraftKings ownership has changed throughout the course of 3 years.
Yeah.
People don't even talk about Justin Rose anymore. But before, he used to be like the contrarian play every single week because no one wanted to use him. Like you'd go to the Masters and be like, oh, it's 5% owned Justin Rose. But he has built up such goodwill over the Masters last year. Not so much this year, but he wasn't a disaster either. That people see him at a lower price but equate him to the level of the Rorys in terms of finishing. And he has had some great finishes at big events, so that sticks in people's mind and they will own him on a lot of cash game teams, and that will just translate over into GPP. So if you're thinking that Justin Rose comes in under owned, you could be right. I would suggest you're probably way too low on what you think his ownership projection is going to be, though. Kyle asked, do you see Rory being a top-end contrarian play who has gained the most strokes here over the past 5 years, especially with this loose of a pricing? Yes. One of the reasons I keep mentioning a lot of these names in the $6,000 levels because I played some Rory, and I need to go down into that level in order to get him. And I wanted to play some Rory Rahm lineups while I was at it to get super risky. And if you start doing that, you got to dip down a little bit lower. Now, I like Rory this week. I think that he will be more owned than Jason Day, but more than likely he's going to be the 4th in terms of ownership of the 5 above $10,000. So I like Rory a lot here.
Yeah, he's a guy that, at first when I was starting my lineups, I stayed away from this 11K and above price range just because there's so much talent below that. But yeah, I mean, Jason Day comes off of a victory. Rory McIlroy, again, a great player, especially now currently is in his TPC. He didn't play well in his sort of beginning of his career at TPC Sawgrass. Now he's starting to pick up. Now he's starting to play a little bit better. But for me, I'm going to fade those top 2 guys and go with Jordan Spieth. Again, I don't think that he's going to be extremely heavily owned. If guys are playing the contrarian up at the top, I think they're doing what you're doing. I think they're going Rory just because of the talent is there. I think a lot of people are scared of Jordan Spieth. And so that's a guy that I'm trying to fit in some of my lineups to be contrarian to DJ and some of these other high-priced or high-elite guys. But yeah, Rory is a fantastic fade, but you gotta swim in that 6K range, and that's tough sometimes.
Joseph asks, is this an example of a week where ownership is overlooked by community and it will not matter? Compare the Masters field versus the Players, 6 of 6, etc. Well, the Masters field, you're going to get just way more people, a higher percentage of the field making the cut. There's far less variance. The field is stronger here in terms of the overall field. Like when we go look at the worst players on the slate this week, like I mentioned Chez Reavie. Chez Reavie made the cut at the Masters. Why did Chez Reavie make the cut at the Masters? I don't know, because like Marco Mero was in the field and like 90-year-old people. Like you're just not getting that this week. The worst players that you're going to find are decent players like Asswagen. Asswagen's fine. He's like the worst guy in this field. Like JJ Spawn and Michael Kim, guys that could definitely make the cut. So I think that, listen, we always get into a trap where we overanalyze ownerships, but I do think it's important. Listen, if you like a guy to win and you think a guy's going to be good, I don't care what his ownership is, play that guy. That's always the best rule of thumb that you can get to in any of this. But when you're starting to compare things like, oh, guys in this range that I kind of feel all the same about, it's the same reason like I have more Fleetwood and Hideki than I really would want to here. Do I really like Patrick Reed way more than I like Hideki? No. So I'll just take Hideki, who's going to be like a fourth of the ownership. Just because no one, he probably won't be that in contrast to him, but you know what I mean? Like I like to use ownership as a tiebreaker, and sometimes I think that when you look at the 6 of 6 of this tournament and see how many people miss the cut from across the board, that you have to be uncomfortable with some of your picks. That's why I'm going with the Hermans of the world and the Leishmans of the world and the Byung-Hun Ans of the world. I don't love them, but every time I look at the leaderboard at the Players, there's just random weirdos. So if I'm going to go with the random weirdo approach, guys that like you can make a case for sure, or against, whatever you want to do. But if I just know that they're going to be low owned, the probability of me cashing if I have one of those guys is way higher if I just avoid some of the chalk.
Exactly. And guys that we're deeming bad, right, in the low 7s and the high 6s, as a guy like Kodaira, your boy Kodaira, who, again, top 50 when he won. Since he won, he's not really making a case, but he's still a guy that can play well, that can perform. I mean, Jamie Lovemark, James Hahn, some of these other guys that are in this price range, they're not bad players. It's just that the field is extremely strong. And if you hit on these guys, even the Shane Lowrys, if you hit a Scott Piercy, another guy that I like that, does well if the tournament stopped on Saturday or Friday, if they can perform. And we've seen guys in this price range or maybe a little bit higher perform well at the Players, then you're going to be in the cash. You're going to be a guy. You're going to have a lot of lineups if you sprinkle these guys into 15%, not even 10% of your lineups. You're going to be in a really good spot because of the variance of this tournament, probably in any other tournament this season.
Yeah, Andrew asked, balanced lineup construction the way to go given the volatility of this tournament? Seems like 6 of 6 more than any other week is super valuable. I mean, in theory, yes, but you're taking out the volatility part again. Just because you play a super balanced lineup doesn't mean all those guys make the cut. If anything, I think that if you want to win a GPP this week, going super studs and not necessarily super duds and just taking 4 guys in the $6,000 area could be a better approach because there's so much volatility that if you can hit on the right $6,000 guys, they're all going to be like 1% owned because everyone's going more balanced this week over stars and scrubs. So that would be what I would think. Carrie asks, what percentage of players do you think are going to go with a JT Dustin Johnson stack? Well, if I look at percentage-wise in terms of lineup, Dustin around 20 to 25%, Justin Thomas somewhere between 17 and 22%. Not everyone's going to play those two guys together. I don't know, like 3% of teams maybe? What do you think?
Yeah, same with me. I mean, again, you're probably like the earlier question alluded to is I think a lot of guys are going balanced. Again, it's fun, I think, if you can get that lineup to work, but it's not going to be a heavily used lineup pairing those two guys together.
Big Vince, he's in the chat. How will Stenson backfire for me? WD, MC, or just fall apart before the final round? This could be a withdrawal week, and someone actually put this on too, Matt, about Henrik Stenson. According to his FantasyNational.com models, Stenson is grading out very poorly historically at Pete Dye courses, including 97th overall in strokes gained total, 133rd around the green. Does any of this scare you despite his current form? It kind of does. And the big thing Stenson has on the field, generally speaking, what's the best club he has? It's his 3-wood off the tee that he hits down the middle every single time. Now that will be good here because you really do not want to be in the water and in the middle of the fairway. However, guys like Luke List guys like Dustin Johnson and John Rahm, they're not hitting driver on anything outside of the par 5s, or unless they're trying to go for a par 4. So their accuracy is going to inherently be better. It's always the Gary Woodland effect. Why does Gary Woodland play better at these shorter courses? Well, he doesn't hit driver all the time, so he hits it down the middle of the fairway every time. So they just think more guys would just hit their 3-wood, but that extra length is so beneficial at some courses that you have to gamble on it. Here you don't. So I think that a lot of his best skills are mitigated. I would be worried that he's just playing so well that it doesn't really matter right now with Stenson. I mean, look how well he finished at the Masters. He never plays well at the Masters. And he does have a good track record at this course, being a former winner, rather than some of the other Pete Dye courses. So it wouldn't really scare me off of Stenson if I like Stenson. I do think it's a bit of a red flag, though.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Stenson is not going to have a huge advantage over the field when he has to hit his 3-wood because, like you said, everyone's going to be clubbing down. Keeping it in the fairway accuracy is premium here. If it's not a withdrawal or miscut, where I feel Stenson could burn us is putting. Now, his putting has been better this year than it probably ever has been in my recollection. That's the spot where I think Stenson, and around the greens, right? That's the spot where Stenson doesn't really do well. That would scare me, but he's playing extremely well. And now with the Paul Casey withdrawal, I think a lot of us are going to be on Stenson. A lot of people are going to see that he correlates so nicely to this course because of that part of his game. But if I were scared about one part, it'd be a short game in his putting.
I want to rapid fire. I didn't realize how many questions were in the chat, and I want to kind of get through them and get to the very end. Maybe we'll try to expand on some things that we haven't touched on as much. Of course, you can always go back and rewatch this on demand. It'll be available on the DraftKings YouTube page immediately after. And about 5 minutes after we end, it'll be up on my podcast feed. If you just want to put in the buds, go for a walk, and listen to some golf. Some bad advice and some golf. What's a better mix than that? Get some exercise while you're at it and make you feel better about everything. Ponderosa Sports asks, give a like too. Don't be afraid to do that. I'm going to go with Jason Day. I think I'll get low ownership with him. Question mark? Yeah, he's going to be in the single digits. So if you like Jason Day, just pile him into lineups if you want to. Model seems to get flipped upside down when I go through Pete Dye on. Now I'm not sure how to handle it. Listen, just go with your gut on some of this stuff. I mean, golf stats are great information, and you can almost glean whatever you want out of them. So take away what you feel is valuable and just disregard the rest. I mean, half this stuff is going to be gut anyway. I mean, when people play DraftKings lineups, they don't play certain guys because they don't like them. That's the extent of it. So just do whatever you got to do and fit your process. Here's one from Jeff. Alexander Lede? Is he a sneaky play? Well, he's French. Of course he's a sneaky play, for one thing. But no, I actually think he's going to garner more ownership than people think.
Yeah, I think he's getting the Ryder Cup bump, but not for me.
Yeah, he's not for me either. Trevor asks, thoughts on Bryson? I feel like he's about to pop out, win number 2. I actually happen to agree with you. That's why I kept some exposure to him. I think he's going to be too chalky. I think he's overpriced in this event, and we're going to get Bryson at better prices, at better odds, and everything over the next 8 weeks, unless he wins this tournament, and then we're shit out of luck. But here we are. I think he's a fine play. I do think he's a bit chalky. So again, I'm just taking field average on him. You too?
Yeah, same with me. I think we can, there's other tournaments out there that we could get Bryson at a better at a better return. So same with me.
Jeremy Jones wants to know about Xander Schauffele. Seems to find his way into his lineups every single week. Don't like Xander this week. He's been god-awful around the greens. I want to wait for him to get back on bent grass from Bermuda, where he's had a lot more success, at least last year. And this is his first time playing the event. I think there are just too many factors working against Xander here.
Yeah, and a guy right by him is Adam Hadwin. I like him a lot better at that price. And so it's going to be tough to say no to Xander just at this price because of his talent. But like you said, not playing well, and Adam Hadwin's right there. So I'm going to take Hadwin.
What do you think about Chappell this week? We did a big part about Chappell at the very beginning, so you're going to have to go back and check that. I'm not playing him. You are a little bit. That was the consensus on that one? All right.
Just a little, yeah. I played him way too much, so I had to take some ownership away. Just a little bit.
Kyle Tyree, do you like the RBC Heritage as a good comparison for this week? See, woo! And Ian Poulter both play well there. I actually do, which means I should probably have some Kadira, although it's his first time playing this course, and I think experience does matter just a little bit here in some top-end finishes, just because it is they're both strategy courses. They're both Pete Dye courses. It's the Pete Dye course that correlates the most to this one in terms of length, in terms of bunkers, in terms of getting off the fairway and what that can really do to your game. I don't think it's the only one. I think that API has been very good at finding some really good winners here. The Wyndham is another one, another course that Siwoo Kim won at, and one where Henrik Stenson won at last year. Patrick Reed has won at in the past. That I think that when you just start looking at it, I think the direct correlation between Heritage and here is one, but I think there are other shorter courses or similar skill type courses that can go a long way. Were there any other courses you'd throw into that mix?
Yeah, some of these short Florida courses as well. There's definitely a connection with
Honda,
guys. Yeah, exactly. That play
Valspar.
well.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So those are the other ones that I would just add to that. But yeah, I mean, in terms of distance and some of those correlations, yes. But in terms of strategy, course management, the feeling that these guys, like you said, experience is going to play a part. And so, grain of salt. But yeah, that's definitely a corollary for me.
SRP Fantasy Football asks, also, when it comes to world ranking compared to pricing, Russell Henley is way up there. What do you think about him this week, despite his lack of top 10s? I gave him a look. Maybe it's just recency bias on my part, but he made me feel bad last week, so I don't want to use him.
Yeah, I'm not going to be using him either. There's other guys there.
I think historically, though, because we saw Dirt McGirt pop up in the first round last year, when you look at the courses that Henley has won at, whether it be Honda or the Cops coming to get Reid or at the Sony Open, there are courses where tee to green stuff can be really good and play itself out, and he always puts better on Bermuda. So I get the case for him, just not for me here. How much of my net worth is too much money to have on this tournament? Every year I tell myself I'm going to go on vacation for the Players, so I don't do any DraftKings and I don't bet on this tournament. And I'm like, oh yeah, people always want to hear about the Players. It's one of the most popular. I have to do this one. I need to be here for this week. And I am just losing all my money. There's so much variance in this event that you just embrace it and try not to get too crazy. Will Fleetwood go under-owned due to recency bias, or is he just bad now? Asking for a friend. I'm using Fleetwood, you're using Fleetwood, and we do think that he comes in far under-owned than what he is. This guy's asking about Dean Burmista, the Burmista lady. I don't think he's in the field, is he?
Yeah, I didn't see him in any of my research either.
Unless this guy's asking about stupid Euro. If you're playing Euro this week, you got problems. I'm not going to lie to you. Like, there's no one playing in there. Joseph asks, how much do you factor in course history this week? I prefer to look at Pete Dye history rather than specific course history, because if you go look at anyone's course history outside of Zach Johnson, Sergio, Martin Keimer, and Molinari, and even Molinari's missed like 3 cuts in the past 6 years. He just had good form recently. That no one has good course history here, really, right?
Yeah, I mean, Adam Scott is another guy that I would add to that. Yeah, but I mean, like you said, there's so much variance. I mean, you've gotten, missed cuts before victories here. So course history, yes, a little bit, but I'm always a guy who likes current form anyway, in terms of when I look at these guys. But yeah, just a couple of those guys I would add as a tiebreaker if I had to.
Adam Kennedy says Lahiri at 6.8K is a lock to miss the cut? Because I would take that.
Yeah. Lahiri's never a lock for anything.
He's a lock to go into the water like 3 times.
Exactly.
Maybe on the same hole. Yeah.
Yeah.
Trevor, Phil, Bryson, Fleetwood. Phil is playing really well. Bryson as well. Fleetwood should fit this course more. I have more Bryson than any of those two. I have 0 Phil, and I have some Fleetwood. So that's where I would power rank them. Are you using Phil?
Yeah, some. I mean, Phil's another guy who should do well here, but never does. And so for me, it's going to be Fleetwood, Bryson, and then Phil. I have some sprinkles of Phil, just because I at that price, I just wanted to play some just in case he pops, but not a lot, because if I'm going off of the Tiger or the DeChambeau ownership, I'm going to take some Phil. I'm going to pay up a little bit, but just a little bit, not a lot.
Kyle asks, any love for Louis this week? 13 strokes gained the past 5 years here in a sub 10%. He might not get to sub 10%. People are kind of filtering towards Louis from the buzz that I'm hearing. He'd be the last of the big 3 South Africans that I would go to. I'd go to Grace first, I'd go to Charles first, second, and then Louis. Full disclosure, I have none of them.
Yeah, I would add Rory Sabbatini into that more.
I have Sabbatini. That's all a price thing.
Yeah, exactly. But out of those, like you said, for me, he's not popping right now this time of the season, so I'm going to be off on Louis.
Thoughts on Cantlay? I like Cantlay. I'm probably a bit over what the field is, but he's going to be relatively chalky in terms of where he's at. So it'll be Griot. Cantlay will probably be second in ownership from that mid-$7,000 level. I'd guess him around like 14%. I think I have 20.
Yeah, I think he's a better bet as opposed to DraftKings. I mean, you got him at what, 60-something? 66 to 1?
66 to 1, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's a really good bet, for a guy like Cantlay. Just for me at DraftKings at his price, it's tough in terms of my lineups to make that work. I went a little bit up to Berger in that range. So for me, I'm going to be off on Cantlay.
Let's see. There was a question here about Rahm. I think that Rahm will be... Oh, is Rahm a good pivot off of Casey? I mean, I like Rahm better than Casey to begin with. That's why I had so much Rahm. But Rahm's going to be super highly owned. Like, let's not beat around the bush here. That upper 8, lower $9,000 level is where everyone, like, when the guy asked earlier about like the Justin Thomas, Dustin Johnson lineups, I think we'll see less of those because we're seeing an even distribution between ownership of all the top 5 guys, which means people are taking one of those guys, then going directly into that next level instead of pairing the 2 top guys around the same. So I think that he's a fine pivot. I think you should just play John Rahm. I think he's a good play. How much Kadira? How much is Kadira on DK? Listen, you can go to fucking DraftKings and figure that out for yourself, pal. What do you think of Cantlay? I'm hearing a lot of Grillo and ZJ talk, but not him. I'm hearing just as much Cantlay talk. I like all 3 of them, so we'll go on with that. We have a problem. More Kadira. I use multiple sites for ratings, and Kadira is popping up on 2 of the 3 sites. The only site he is not is Fantasy National Golf Club. Please talk me off the ledge. Listen, you can use Kadira if you want. No one else is going to use him. I think that the only reason that he's in there is because he only has like 2 weighted tournaments. It would be Heritage, where he won, and then it would be WGC Mexico, I think, where I don't think he played very well. So that would be why he's not popping up.
Yeah, and I think this person's using a good strategy too, especially with these international players, even guys that come off of the Euro Tour and that play in some of these high profile, like a Ross Fisher we saw there. A lot of their tournament, a lot of their stats on Fantasy National are from, long time ago if they haven't played recently. So take it with a grain of salt, click through and see what tournaments that he's done well at and use different corollary sites or stats when you're looking at a guy like Kadira because of that on Fantasy National. So that'd be my only addition to that.
D. Ruff says this course sets up perfectly for Matthew Fitzpatrick. What do you think? Just like how RBC Heritage sets up perfectly for Matthew Fitzpatrick. He misses the cut every year. Actually, he may have made it this year for the first time ever. I have no interest in Matthew Fitzpatrick ever. Just he's not a guy I ever play. So this week would be no different. Maybe he finally pops. I know Ryan Baroff would be so fired up if Fitzpatrick finally plays well.
Yeah, this doesn't have Masters. If it was the Players Masters, then maybe, but no way.
I'm fading Grillo off of high ownership. Is that a foolish play? I don't think so. Listen, if you're not feeling Grillo, and listen, the reason that people are is because he's playing well right now. He pops off in every stat model. Played the junior players here. Good performance last season at this tournament. There's a lot of cases for Grillo. He's still Grillo, and when Grillo is chalk, he tends to combust. So if you want to fade him, you're boxing out like 22% of the field right off the top.
Absolutely. Grillo it's the same thing with recency bias too, right? If a guy plays bad for us, we don't want to use him, even if you can make a good point in terms of statistics, current form, so on and so forth. But Grillo for me has played well when I've used him, so I'm going to be on Grillo. I'm going to eat that chalk because I feel strongly about him playing at this tournament. But you're right. If you want to fade one of these guys, or even the other guys that we talked about that you think they're going to be 20% owned, you can do that. And again, this tournament has a lot of variance. To beat a drum here, this tournament you can see winners in a lot of these different price ranges. You don't have to necessarily go up top and suffer a lot of win equity up there. You can go down below and really find a winner in those low price ranges. So yeah, I'm fine with that.
Tommy Goat says no one is chalk. Stop saying chalk, Reed. Oh, sorry, Tommy, you're too triggered. Maybe you need to take a step back from the chat and go get some mental help. Next one.
Agreed.
A. Wright, thoughts on C. Woo, Kim. No one seems to be mentioning him, but in good form, and he won last year. He'll carry ownership because he's a defending champion. I just bet him. I can't take him destroying my. I have enough on him that it'll be nice when he wins. He's 125 to 1 right now, 100 to 1 on some spots. But no, he's not making my DraftKings lineups this week.
No way. Better bet.
See, I like some people went with the people, like I had asked. If you're going to respond to people in the chat, use the @ so I know that they're not questions. Now I'm just reading through questions because people aren't doing that. Great. Rob asks, any love for Patty Perez this week? Haven't heard much buzz about him, and he rates out okay in my model. Listen, if anyone rates out for you, no one's going to own Pat Perez. I've been down the Pat Perez road the past few weeks, and it's just been so disastrous that I'm letting my own recency bias and his poor recent form really figure that out for me. And he hasn't been good in a while, so that worries me. But hey, he can do it here. Most definitely. He's Patty Perez, scoring on par 4s, scoring on par 5s, good around the green game, get that putter hot, and boom! You got a stew going with Patty Perez.
And he'd be a fun guy at this tournament to watch throughout all 4 rounds. I mean, he's one of these guys that we can kind of, have a connection to just because he's that, lovable guy that doesn't necessarily show that he cares, but he does, obviously, because he's a professional. So he's a fun guy to watch. For me, I'm going to be off on Perez for the same reasons. And there's a guy in there, Charlie Hoffman is someone that I'm really looking into that is not statistically standing out well here, but at that price range, tough fields, I'm going to potentially look at trying to fit in Hoffman in some of my lineups, just because in case he pops, he's a guy that can run off, a bunch of birdies. And obviously on DraftKings, those birdie or better can definitely pan out very well.
Jacob asked, Mitchell playing pretty good, who was added to the field after Paul Casey withdrew. He was the first alternate. He said he'll probably be the min price, like his game for this course. He's not going to make it into the system. We don't get those sorts of updates outside of majors when they release a field, then re-update it on a Monday. He won't be added. So, sorry, can't play Keith Mitchell. Who's your flyer at 100 to 1 or worse odds? You can check my cheat sheet up on facebook.com/thepme, where I list everything like I do every week. Next one, are you going to do an ownership projection segment show? No, I only do those for majors, and we talk about all the ownerships in here anyway, so this is basically that. Why so anti-Bubba after you called his win on the last Pete Dye course? Because there are certain Pete Dye courses where Bubba plays really well, and there are other Pete Dye courses where he doesn't play so well. This is one of those courses where he doesn't play so well. What's his best finish here ever in like 20 years? Like T26?
Yeah. I mean, again, I'm not huge on Bubba. I like him as a contrarian play. I think the big reason why, like I said earlier, is he can't get extremely creative off the tee with his approach shots. He has to hit more straight line shots, and obviously that's not Bubba's game. So, and he's a guy, if it doesn't fit his eye, which Pete Dye, he plays tricks in terms of your approaches and different strategy and course management. If it doesn't fit your eye, then you're not going to do well. And Bubba is a guy that if he feels like it's not fitting his eye, he's just not going to play well. So that's the reason why I think a lot of people are off of Bubba, but he's playing so well. So I'm just going to take some flyer on Bubba.
Why no love for Henley? We already talked about that. Any love for Snedeker this week? If you can find a fairway, feel like he could be worth a flyer. That's what I think it was Roz or Leone on yesterday's show brought up Snedeker, and I wasn't even thinking about him, but yeah. He's starting to play a little bit better, too. The last two performances have been really nice for Snedeker. He didn't end up making any of my teams because I went with Brian Herman in that spot instead as kind of like the low-owned guy. Maybe the putter gets off, but you can easily make exactly the same case for Snedeker. I think that, he can be a really nice flyer play.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, for me, I'm not playing him. I'm going a little bit down. Ryan Moore is another guy that's standing out decently for me at that price range. But yeah, I mean, playing well of recent, obviously with the injury potentially, who knows, right? Who knows? This is a guy that's been playing well, for a better part of his career, but just not recently. So I'm going to be off on Snedeker, but I wouldn't mind some ownership on him.
Streelman shot 90 in a round last week. I don't think it was quite 90. But has his course history here. He has a lot of missed cuts. He also has a second place finish. That's where Kevin Streelman is coming in. I feel like Berger can make a run. It's in Florida. Listen, man, like it's same as Ollie. Like, do people just say this every week and it just happens? Just save Berger for the St. Jude. I actually don't mind. I don't hate Berger here. I like Moore more than I like Berger. You always do kind of want to play him in Florida. Just wait for FedEx. He wins it every year, so he'll probably win it again. And then people get all fired up for Berger, and then he'll disappoint. Eric says, I understand fading high-priced chalk, but what if your high fade chalk wins? You probably can't win a GPP. Well, yeah, if you don't have the winner, you're not going to have the GPP. We're not saying just play 6 guys who no one owns. Yes, if there's going to be a situation where you're tied on something in some of these larger things, just take ownership into consideration. If you're torn between something, go with the lower owned guy. It gives you better leverage against the field. You're gonna have guys that are owned in your lineup. It's just gonna happen. If everyone above $9,000 is gonna be at least 15% owned, well, you're gonna have at least 15% in your lineups there. Fade Bryson this week. Okay, thanks. Russell Knox, he's been playing terrible lately, but he does minus last year's course redesign where he missed the cut. You can play Russell Knox if you want to. You playing any Russell Knox?
No.
Thoughts on Hao Tong Lee? I really have none.
None.
Is it smart to pivot off 2 groups of death this week? I mean, I never look into who's playing with who. I think that's wildly overrated.
Yeah, I mean, the Tiger had some of that at the beginning when he first came back, but
what? You mean like the week that Sam Burns beat him?
Exactly. I mean, if a Rory and a JT are complaining about not playing well, and then Sam Burns comes out and beats Tiger in that fight, there's no real correlation to groupings.
Who would you play in what order? Louis, Poulter, or Chesson Hadley? Rank them. I'm playing 0 shares of all 3 of those guys. Poulter would be the only one I would consider. Yeah.
I was going to say, I was trying to think of if there's any lineups that I have with any of those guys. Poulter, maybe, but that's about it.
When will it be smart to start rostering Hideki again? Well, this week for me, so that's where I'm at with him.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at his price range and some of the guys that are going to garner more ownership than him, again, elite player, can't putt, but if he just putts moderately good, he's going to be a guy that's going to give you a lot of return because of where he's situated in that ownership. So Hideki, it would be a good time to play him here too as well.
Oddly, Fantasy National rates Zach Johnson really low in ball striking the last for 24 rounds on Pete Dye. What up with that? Well, if you just click on the rounds, you can see what tournaments are weighted in those. Then you can do, that's why the site's there, so you can do the research for me to tell you everything. You know, like, honest to God, I'm so terrible at this. It's probably better off you do the research than me. Is Rory Sabbatini a sneaky good DK play? I'm using him. I think so. Do you?
Yeah, I like Rory. Like I said, he plays well in these tough fields, so I like him.
What do you think about Speith? I'm using Speith. You using Spieth or no? You're not, right? You are?
I got him in a couple of my lineups, so I faded the top guys. I got Spieth.
Chesson Hadley sneaky play this week. Also, thoughts on Adam Hadwin. I don't like Chesson Hadley because these are very small greens, and if he misses the green, the guy chips like me, so he's not going to be making a lot of pars. If he hits all of them, he could be top-notch here, and the ball striking has been really good. I'm going to fade him. Hadwin I do love, though. I really like Hadwin a lot.
Yeah, Hadwin's a guy at that 7,300. He's another guy that I sort of use as my guy at RBC, and he withdrew. The same with Paul Casey, but I really like Hadwin at this price. I think this course sets up perfectly for him. Doesn't hit it extremely long off the tee, but he doesn't have to here. He hits it extremely accurate off the tee. Another guy that's putting, has putted well. Not putting as well as he has in the past this season, but still a guy that can short game is great. That can putt well. We've seen it, and he's accurate. He's a guy that sets up really well here. I really like Hadwin as well.
Leishman or Noren in a lineup without any of the top 5 guys, which one would you go with? I would go with Leishman, just because he's going to be probably even a third of the ownership of Noren.
Yeah, same with me.
All right, I like them. I'm using them both, though. What about Bud?
Yeah, both.
Bud Cauley, 5 straight cuts made, 6 top 20s this year. I don't like Bud Cauley.
No, not for this tournament. No way.
Let's see. Is your model on Fantasy National strictly Pete Dye, or are you looking at both? I mean, no, it's not strictly Pete Dye. It's, if anything, it's definitely not Pete Dye. I clicked on the Pete Dye stuff to see if I missed anyone or see if anything stood out, but I would much rather rely on recent form and how guys are just playing coming in rather than looking at historic data from any means. I think it's interesting to look at, but I don't know how much you can take away from it unless it's like a super sleeper guy or something like that. Like, oh, this guy, like Bill Haas, for example. Bill Haas playing a little bit better, generally plays really well, not only on Pete Dye courses, but shorter courses like Valspar and Wyndham. Has played really well at East Lake in the past, a place with a lot of water. So you have to contextualize some of this and try to find some guys that pop out. But no, my model was just ran on all courses over that same different period and just looking at short-term adjusted versus long-term adjusted and see where they meet up in the middle. That's what I do every week.
Yeah, and if you want to, what I'm doing is also using the mixed model and sort of side by side with my power rankings, just because I don't want it to overweigh too much on what I'm looking at. I'd rather go to current form. So if you want to include that Pete Dye and then use tee to green and some of these approach, strokes gain approach with that Pete Dye context, you can. That's why we see sometimes Brian Harman and Jonas Blix, these guys that we can fit into our lineups if we're taking those top guys, but it's not going to overrun my stat model at all.
Zimir Boban. I'm sorry for mispronouncing your name. That's on my bad for not being able to read. I want to say, maybe you can hit us back up if you're still in the chat here. Croatian? Somewhere in Eastern Europe.
Yeah.
I'll try to figure it out. So hit me up. See if Croatia is right for me. I look at stats so much, but sometimes your gut can be more important. My gut says that Noren has a big moment in North America this year. This could be the week. Listen, stats can only tell you so much. This is golf. We just talked about how much variance comes, especially with this tournament. Just think about the variance in golf week to week. Sometimes your gut's just going to know better. If you feel like Noren is going to be a breakout player, and listen, his adjusted form over not just the past 12 rounds where he hasn't played so well, but past 36, past 50, the past year and a half, Noren's been a top 10 player in the world. I think he's ranked 13th now or something. But yeah, he could have a really good moment, and he's played really well in Florida this year. So if Noren doesn't rate out well for you, but you like Noren, play Noren, because he definitely could win, most definitely. Cantlay, already touched on that one. How do you feel about Ollie? He didn't even come up. Crazy. I know other people love Ollie way more than I do.
Exactly. Ollie's just not. He pops in some of these tournaments, but he's not playing well enough at all for me to roster him. So I'm going to be off on Ollie as well.
Left 1K on the table on DraftKings. Is that too much? I think so, but that's me.
Yeah. I mean, the most I think I left off was about 300. 1K is a little excessive in my opinion.
Any gut instinct on Tommy Fleetwood this week? I think he plays well.
Yeah, same with me. I think this course sets up really nicely for Fleetwood and the ownership. So yeah, I think he plays well.
Jon Rahm or Ricky Fowler this week? I have lots of Jon Rahm and 0 Ricky Fowler.
I have more Rahm, and I think he's definitely going to play well. But I just Ricky. Yeah, I love Ricky. I mean, we share the same last name. I can't. It's my birthright. I got to do it. So I got one or two shares of Ricky.
I'm overweight on Stanley and Stricker instead of chalkier Simpson and Hadwin. Thoughts? Well, I guess it depends on how overweight you are. I have Stanley and Stricker projected around like 4 to 5%, and Simpson and Hadwin projected around like 12 to 15%. So if you're talking about being overweight on the other two, you're around like 30% or 25%. If you're overweight on the other two, you have them in 10% of your lineups. I don't mind it. I'm not playing any Webb Simpson because I'm not feeling it with Webb Simpson. I am playing Hadwin, though, because I think that he's going to be very good, and I am playing Stricker. No Stanley for me, which is shocking because he's a part of the Pat Mayo brand, Kyle Stanley.
Yeah. That's your boy. Yeah, no Webb for me as well. Although, I mean, it's weird. Like, I think you mentioned it on some of your previous shows. This is sort of a weird season where Webb's putting really well, and he never really does. And so he's playing well, so I can see why you want to get him into your lineups. But yeah, I'm not going to be on Webb. I'm going to be more on the other guys we mentioned.
Chris Stroud will finish top 20. You heard it here first. Oh, that's from my man, Mr. Boban again, who is from Croatia. I knew it.
There you go.
Stroud just pops up so infrequently. He, again, like I said with this entire $6,000 range, if you got a feel for anyone down there, go with him. Because all their top 20 odds are like ridiculous. Like they're not high percentages to make the cut. If you got a feeling, you go with it. Gregory, we're going to start closing out here. It's amazing. Is it amazing to you that Phil Mickelson has gained more than 10 strokes in 5 of his past 7 tournaments and is going to have less than 10% ownership? I don't know if he's going to have less than 10% ownership. I think amongst like people that play DraftKings every week he will, but if the public is going to start getting influenced, how many like Tiger Phil teams do you think are going to be? There's going to be a lot when you start bringing in the entire public into this. I never liked Phil at this course. I know he's won it before, but I feel like historically when you get to a course where Phil's going to hit driver because he always hits driver, and the driver is his worst club in the bag, that just there's that much water around, it starts to scare me with Phil. And it can't be like last week where he goes in the water and saves par. Now he's going to be in the middle of the fucking drink here.
Yeah. I mean, he's a guy that should play well here, but he rarely does. And his good drive percentage right now is not good over the last 24 rounds. And so, yes, you can make a case. He's not going to be, like you said, 10% owned. He's going to be more in that 15 to 20, probably more 20. So I'm not going to have a lot of shares of Phil. Like I said, I only have about 1 to 2 lineups of Phil. But again, you're going to see a huge ownership with him. So again, probably 1 or 2 is not a good idea, but I just want to see how he does.
All right, final ones here. The betting bartender asks, best initial player this week: JB Holmes, CT Pan, JJ Spawn, JJ Henry, or Da Points. That's not an initial. His first name's actually Da, which would be awesome if that was true. JJ Spawn, because I love JJ Spawn.
Exactly. I mean, yeah, JJ Spawn. That's that. I have no other, statistical analysis on that. JJ Spawn.
Spencer asked, any thoughts on the all glistening arms team? Someone tweeted that out yesterday. Stenson, Keimer, Rafa Cabrera Bello. Great glisten. Like they're like the Rock in the Fast movies, just like putting on some arm butter, and they're like good to go as soon as they got the veins popping out of their arms. Very fit fellas. Stenson not so much anymore since he had the kid, but Keimer is the peak of German human efficiency when it comes to staying very lean and having great arm glisten on the course. Pat, I'm going to make a 4-player lineup. Okay. Probably not the best idea when there's 6 spots available, but okay. I'm going to make a 4-player lineup. I'm locked in on Cam Smith, Kisner, Bryson. I need a 4th. Sergio, Noren, Scott, or Grillo. Vegas odds say that Vegas odds on Adam Scott are around 50 to 1. Oh, you need a better book. I got him at 125 this morning.
Yeah.
Sergio is the play of that group, in my mind.
Absolutely. I mean, if out of those 4, you can pick, absolutely, Sergio.
All right, 3 more here. That was the same one. Barn Rat thoughts. Not digging it. You?
Nah.
All right. Who's going to be the most owned in the one and done? I said Tiger on the show, and I'll be using, I have 2 teams, so I'll use Tiger on one of them. I'm using Rahm in the other one. I couldn't use Rahm because Feinberg picked Rahm, but I went in the big one and done. You can go see the players that are already picked. I think Rahm is second in most used players so far this year, so no one's got Rahm left to play besides me. So that's why I'm rolling out John Rahm in that format. I think that Justin Thomas is a really good play that if you haven't used him yet, and he's also someone that has been used a lot. So you're getting to that next tier of guys. If you haven't used Rory yet, I think this could be an interesting spot for him. Are there any off the board one and dones that you like?
I mean, Justin Rose was probably used at Augusta. So, I mean, he's one guy that I think in terms of if you haven't, clearly he's someone that I really like. Again, Grillo. I think Grillo is another guy that, probably wasn't used earlier, and he stats up really nicely here. The only other flyer that I would think would be Berger. I'm not too confident in that pick. I'd rather go with the other two guys.
Cost aside, would just objectively, just to have one of them, would you rather have Spieth or Rose? I'd rather have Spieth.
Yeah.
I just always rather have Spieth. Even when he misses cuts, he's the guy to go with here.
Yeah.
What do you think Kuchar's ownership will be? I think that he'll be projected down and be higher than you think. I'll say 17% in the giant $5.
Yeah, 15, 17, 18% is just because he gets that TPC, or he gets that Pete Dye bump. This is probably his best win too of his career, so he'll be heavily owned.
Who did Cust pick this week? Well, you can follow Tim Andercust on Twitter and find out for yourself, because that's where he puts it out. So just go do that. Over under on Tiger Woods making the cut. I think he makes the cut. I think he might win. Yeah. So I think he's going to make the cut.
Out of all the courses that he's played, this sets up perfectly for him. So yeah, I think he makes the cut.
What percentage of lineups in the $5 from sharps or professional DFS players? I think it would help determine ownership percentages. I have no idea. Do you have any guess? Yeah. I don't even have a guess. I have no guess. That's not an over-under. Gregory is right on that. Any AM/PM lineup advantage this week? Doesn't look like it. It looks like the PM both days might get a little bit windier than the morning, but those would even themselves out because people flip-flop between AM and PM. So, no, I don't see any. And there's no rain in the week. Even throughout Sunday, it doesn't look like we're going to get anything above like 12-mile-per-hour wind, which is fine. Yeah, it should be really nice. There's some weather on Sunday or towards the end of the tournament, but that's so far out it could change any day. So why is Justin Rose not getting much attention? Feel like he checks all the categories. Again, we projected him to be the third highest owned player on the slate this week, so I think he might have more attention than you think. Maybe he comes top 5. Either way, Justin Rose going to be very highly owned. Does John do anything for you? 5 top 35. Top 35s in his last 7 starts. Top 35s, that's a new one. Thanks for that one, Carrie. No, doesn't really do it for me. You? No, I appreciate, though, that you made that stat work, right? Top 35s. I don't think that's something that we track, but no, none for me. Kyle Creelman asks, why is to leave money off the table this week? Yeah, in the giant tournament, sure, but you don't need to leave much. $200 is enough. Yeah, I agree. Last question. RH asks, Nick Watney. Is he making the cut this week? I'll say no. I'll say yes. Okay. He's playing well, but I'm not going to roster him. I'm going to have a little caveat with that. I'm going to say yes, he makes, but I'm not rostering him. All right, that'll do it on the Pat Mayo Experience Live Players Q&A. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in, leaving your questions, getting berated by me from time to time, or giving the big thumbs up. If you asked a good question, hope you had some fun, hope you learned some stuff, and maybe even interacting with each other, you get a better sense of where stuff is going to fall this week. I actually know I did. I always like to go do a minor adjustment after we do this chat because people ask questions that I didn't even consider, like the Brandt Snedeker question that's 2 days in a row. It completely eludes me. I feel like I might have to use some Brandt Snedeker. I don't know if I will, but I feel like I should at this point. It's like how I said that Paul Casey, after talking through it with you, be like, Paul Casey's actually kind of a good play. Then I didn't use him. Yeah. He came fourth. So what do I know? Anyway, Reid Fowler, where can everyone find your work and find you online? Yeah, Reid T. Fowler on Twitter. DraftKings, we're always doing course previews. A lot of good stuff coming through with new shows. So Reid T. Fowler everywhere. Tyler Bates, do you think anyone's a solid bet for the top 5 finish? Well, Tyler, you can go to facebook.com/thepme and find my entire betting cheat sheet. For my DK cheat sheet, you can find that up on dkplaybook.com along with my field breakdown, key stats, course, and some initial picks from earlier in the week who I was given the eye to, the evil eye. Subscribe to the DraftKings YouTube channel. Give the episode a like before you get out of here. It goes a long way. Download the podcast, The Pat Mayo Experience, which you can do on iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher, TuneIn, Audio Boom, Google Play, iHeartRadio. Even if you don't listen, just subscribe, rate, and download. I don't care if you listen or not, because that other part's just so good for me. It helps keep the show free, and who would want to pay for this kind of thing? What you want to pay for, fantasynational.com. Last week, for a weekly member to get in at the $7 price range. It is going up due to demand to $10. Got to start boxing some people out here. The system is so good. Can't have everyone using it. We still need to keep that advantage. So $7 if you get on the weekly membership this week. You lock in that rate for as long as you consistently keep the weekly membership. If not, you revert to the $10 platform. I recommend the yearly. It's the best deal on the board, but it comes with every tool, including that new mixed conditions model, which Reid talked about, where you can weigh different rounds, different green types, different wind, whatever you want to look at, you can use it. FantasyNational.com is the most customizable golf database. You can find all the DFS tools you could ever want to enter lineups. If you like doing research on your own, I swear to God, it's the best investment you can make, especially if you play more than $10 a week on DK. All right? I'm Pat Mayo. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for watching. Thanks for contributing. Good luck at the Players Championship. I'll see you next time.